sure what this team is right now, but I'm also pretty sure in March we're going to be pretty good. And he was right. And he finally had a healthy team with all of his stars working on all cylinders, feeling good. It's the first time that's really happened in a bunch of years, and we see the end result. So when all the ingredients are there for him to work with, he makes this a pretty good meal.
He knows how to. You look at the box score and you see 3 stars, but in reality, you look at the contributions away from the score sheet, right? Caitlin Chen, 4 assists in 18 minutes. She goes 1 of 7, but nevertheless, she's capable of setting up some plays. KK Arnold, only 15 minutes off the bench, 3 of 3 from the field, 9 points, 3 assists. It's those little things away from the 3 big names that I feel is really what was able to bring together against a team that, let's face it, and I said this before, it's not a disrespect when I say this, but there's no-name superstar that South Carolina was able to count on that Dawn Staley and the team itself was able to count on in years past.
Yeah, Dawn did not have that one person you could turn to, that big post player you could throw the ball to down low when you just needed a basket. They didn't have that player that when you just need a basket, you can go to. Now, the way they spread things around, for some teams, some opposition, that was a problem, trying to figure out how to defend whom and when. But for UConn, and this is the other part of what you're talking about, Willie, is they don't make mistakes defensively. All those players you mentioned are also such big contributors defensively.
Right.
And in this tournament, and particularly against UCLA and against South Carolina, they didn't make any mistakes defensively. They had everything buttoned up. Everybody was in the right spot. And if you ever watch closely Gino coach, those are the little things are the things that he screams about. Is did you set the screen the right way? Were you in the right spot on the floor that you've been coached to be at defensively every single time? And this collection of players took that coaching on that side and did not make a mistake. So South Carolina, then, it doesn't really matter whether they had 9 scorers or no scorers or that one big person they could turn to, because UCLA had that one big person that they could turn to, and Lauren Betts got her numbers, but it didn't work out very well for UCLA either, because they have a defensive game plan for whatever is in front of them, and they execute it so well.
Yeah, you talk about the defense. For the tournament, 38% they held their opponents to, 28% from three-point range. We're talking to Charlie Creme from ESPN. So let's jump into your current article that just came out. The never too early. I like the never too early, not way too early. Top 25. I got absolutely 100% no problem with the fact that you have UCLA number 1, because Corey has just about everybody coming back, and as long as there's a question mark on what JuJu Watkins decides to do, whether it's come back midseason or take the year off, you cannot really speculate on the Trojans.
Yeah, I kind of hedged my bets on USC because of that, just the unknown with them. And I think the way the sport works now, or college sports in general works now, there is so much loss that you think about with all of these teams and all these programs that you really have to then gravitate to the teams that just minimize the loss. And UCLA and South Carolina, for that matter, are minimizing their losses. South Carolina loses a bunch of starters,
right?
But they have, but their best scorers were coming off the bench, so it doesn't look quite the same as it would for other programs. But yeah, with UCLA at number 1, it's because they have everybody that made a major impact on that team by and large back again. There's been no whispers of any of them entering the portal. So you have to ride with what you know in the moment. And that's why I have UCLA number 1. And the other thing too, is one of the things I talked about with UCLA going into the NCAA tournament, and then especially going into the Final Four, is I felt like they had the fewest weaknesses of any of the teams, or the least obvious weaknesses, let's say. But the one big thing that stood out is they'd never been there before. And in women's basketball, you see this all the time. That program that's in the Final Four for the first time or hasn't been there in a while, new group, new coach, they almost always fall short. In fact, they almost never get to the final.
Right.
And that was the case with UCLA. That's what I worried about. Is they'd never been there before. They'd never been in this moment before. And if you talk to coaches, you talk to even players, they'll tell you it matters having gone through it before, because it's an animal that they haven't ever experienced. And it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. There's a lot of responsibility. It sucks you away from your normal routine of preparing for a game. And if you don't know how to function, and you don't have a coaching staff that can guide you through that because they've done it before, you usually have problems. And UCLA obviously had a lot of problems against UConn.
Once again, speaking with Charlie Creme, ESPN, Charlie Creme, all over the women's basketball scene. And check out his Way Too Early as its headline, Top 25. Also takes care of the bracketology every single year. So you mentioned the transfer portal and the moving pieces. I have to imagine Olivia Miles is probably the prize pick. I know she's from the East Coast. What are the chances she lands at a big name? Of course, I'm hinting toward UConn, but is she the top transfer portal person? And who do you think is going to be the biggest or surprise move depending on where they land?
Oh wow, this is a lot. I would say Miles and Skylar Latson are probably 1 and 1A. I mean, Latson led the country in scoring at Florida State, and she may not leave Florida State. I'm guessing. This is pure guesswork here. I'm thinking Latson's throwing her name out there to see what kind of NIL money might be available for her. And if it's not necessarily to her satisfaction, I could see a scenario where she goes back to Florida State. I don't see Miles going back to Notre Dame. She's not said that that's out of the realm of possibility, but I just can't see it. I think if she wanted to stay at Notre Dame, or didn't want to stay at Notre Dame, but she could have gone to the draft and felt comfortable doing that. She clearly didn't. And then staying at Notre Dame, and she did. It's very comfortable here. I know everybody here. I know college very well. But she still decided to put her name in the portal. So I think something in her says, I need to change the scenery. Yeah. I need to breathe some new air. So I do see her moving on. Now, where would she fit in well? She certainly would fit in well at UConn. I was asked this early last week where I thought a place that she could end up. And TCU came to mind only because Mark Campbell lets his kids do what they do best. He obviously works the portal very hard. That's how we built the team that just made the Elite Eight this past year. And with what happened with Haley Van Lith there and Sedona Prince, it proves to all these other players that, hey, you can be reborn. You can find this new oxygen that you're looking for in that program. There's proof. That's the only reason I'm thinking or saying that maybe TCU could be in the mix too. But there's a short amount of history there. Yep. And wherever those two go, it's going to change the tide of the national run next year. Coney McMahon out of Ohio State's another one that I don't think she's quite at their level, and I think she's kind of leveled off as a player since her freshman year, but she still has huge impact. And if she were to go to a place, say, like LSU, that's been kind of rumored, then she fits in with Michaela Williams and Flau'jae Johnson, who are sticking around. And now that LSU has another big three again, and it puts LSU right there in the mix as a Final Four team.
Let's talk about Paige for a minute here. Over 2 million followers on Instagram. She earns up to an estimated close to $20,000 for a single sponsored post. During the run through the Final Four, she's gained nearly, if not more than 60,000 followers. So the WNBA draft is coming up. How big of an impact do you see? Because last year, obviously, it was Caitlin Clark and then Angel Reese as far as the impact on the league. Does Paige have as big of, and is she going to bring in that kind of noise, that kind of following?
I don't know if there's enough buzz around her. You just mentioned a lot of numbers that would argue with what I just said, but I don't feel like it's quite as big. I almost think Paige is sometimes too good in terms of her public persona, too polished. Clark is like that too, but there was enough going on with Clark that didn't have anything to do with her. There's none of that going on with Paige. There's none of that. She doesn't have that chief rival that's been created sort of outside of of what Clark and Angel Reese did. They didn't create the rivalry; it was invented for them. But I think it certainly helped each of them in their ability to make money, the ability to get eyeballs to the screen. Paige doesn't have that. Everybody loves Paige. Clark had her detractors for whatever, a number of reasons. Some of them were crazy and completely illegitimate, but she had them.
Yes.
Paige doesn't have them.
Yeah.
And you often need that contrarian sort of position in order to really generate buzz, I guess. And I said that word earlier. And I don't know if Paige quite has that. I wish she did, because I think she's the perfect example of what a college athlete in this modern world should be. But I don't know that it's quite there. Now, the impact she's going to have on the court, I hope is significant, because that, if she has the kind of impact on the court in her first year that Clark eventually had, I think she'll drag some of that interest with her. It's going to be tough, though. I think if she does in fact end up at Dallas, I think having a huge impact in terms of winning, I think is going to be difficult.
I got one more for you from the college ranks. I'm curious about your thoughts, only because I got to admit I'm a fan of hers. Adia Barnes. She leaves Arizona, her alma mater, to go to SMU. I think it's a win for SMU, because I think she's a fantastic coach, and the culture that she builds.
I do too. I like Adia. I know her a little bit, and I do find it interesting. I always find it interesting when someone gets a job at their alma mater, has success, and then decides to leave. Obviously financial reasons and certain other factors that go into the ins and outs of a program and an athletic department are at play here. But I always find that curious or interesting. But SMU is sort of, now that they're in the ACC, this is an athletic program. It's sort of smoldering underneath, and they can have a lot of successful programs because there's money around that program. There's money around that area of Texas. So it's probably a good move for her to make it now and strike while the iron is hot, and she was desired to go there. I think she will have success. I think there's a lot of potential in the ACC for a program like SMU. It's in women's basketball. It's not quite as deep as the Big Ten and the SEC are right now. So there's room to grow pretty quickly. In some of the other programs in the ACC, sort of those middle range programs lost a lot of personnel or lost coaches themselves. So there's even right away next year, and she's already made some impact in the transfer portal. Yep. She could have really early success, and that's certainly a place to grow.
Charlie, we appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
Always good to talk to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Your home for everything sports. Follow ESPN Las Vegas